Welcome into the Friday morning live stream here on Coffee and Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. We've got a lot of news to share with you again this morning. Welcome in, CJ. How you doing, bud?
Hey, happy Friday, Bobby.
It's been a long week. It doesn't feel like it's just been 5 days since the Longhorns played in New Orleans. It seems a lot longer than that because of just how difficult that game was to kind of stomach. But all in all, I think the Longhorns had a good season, one that everybody can be proud of. And now we're turning our attention a lot to who is going to be going pro and staying. Captain Americano here comes up with one I think that was really well put. Loved Jay Witt's farewell video to Longhorn Nation yesterday. Class act and one of my all-time favorite Longhorns, not just for what he did with the ball in his hands, but all the little things too. Steve Sarkisian commented on that statement as well in some ways and saying, a true Longhorn, like what it means to be a Longhorn. There's a lot of that going to be going around here in the next week to 10 days. The NFL draft declaration has to be done by January 15th. Jonathan Brooks, Pete Thamel of ESPN reported yesterday that Brooks is expected to announce that he's going to go pro as well. Brooks obviously injured in the 10th game of the season after leading the nation in rushing for the first 10 games with an ACL tear, but still expected to head pro even with the injury. His stock could not be, it's one of those things. Where are we going to look at and what's going to go on with him as they go forward? But obviously he's gotten the feedback that he's good enough to go. The young junior out of Hallettsville, Texas, just a great guy. Again, another great example of a Longhorn that did everything right, sat behind both Bijan and Roshan for a couple of years, did not bellyache, just all he did was go and get better over time, CJ. And, what do you think about these two guys and their announcements? We still got Adonai Mitchell and JT Sanders up that we think are going to announce to go pro. Your thoughts overall at this point?
Well, I thought that comment captured it perfectly. That video from Jordan Whittington that Texas produced was, that was well produced. That was well drawn out. Sitting there watching it thinking, very rarely do you get, I don't want to say too emotional, but you start seeing kind of the hurt in Jordan Whittington's voice as well whenever he's talking about how grateful he was to have been a Longhorn, to have gone on this path down here in Austin. It was awesome. It was a great video. I'm very happy for Jordan. I hope, a team takes a chance on him because they'll be rewarded. And we've talked about it throughout his entire career. He plays the game the right way. He's a selfless football player. And that receiver, that's not normally always the case. So credit to Jordan Whittington. I'm really excited to see just where his career goes. But like you said, for Jonathan Brooks, this was the right decision in my eyes. The injury, albeit it is very unfortunate, and another season could very well have put him, in the conversation for a Doak Walker or even, the Heisman. But, you're sitting there thinking you've shown what you've needed to show for 10 games. You have what is now a top 2, top 3 running back grade, even with the injury. The shelf life of a running back is obviously very short. Go get your guaranteed money. Go get out, and start your NFL career the way that you've always dreamed of doing. So I'm right there with Jonathan Brooks and Jordan Whittington. It's very exciting to see two more playmakers enter the NFL that were former Longhorns.
Yeah, and then Byron Murphy announced yesterday as well, CJ, but that was already expected. He had already accepted a Senior Bowl invite. I don't want to leave him out for lack of people thinking that I'm just forgetting about him, but he had already accepted a Senior Bowl invite. Again, another just class act for the Longhorns as they go forward. I count up right now, at least probably, CJ, as many as 9 guys that might be drafted for the Longhorns during this season, or this off season, I guess you would say, as we look forward to it. 2 wide receivers, potentially a tight end, a running back, 1 offensive lineman, 2 defensive linemen, a linebacker, and then Jahdae Barron might be another one as well. So it could go up as far as 10 at this point. And I think that's, just really an interesting, total, given that it's been so long since Texas had that many guys that have had an opportunity to go pro.
Yeah, we were all up in arms and excited about, 5 guys getting drafted last year, which was a step up from what we saw in 2021 or 2022's draft. So I'm right there with you. How exciting is it? And it's at positions that are fun. Texas has been producing some defensive linemen, some linebackers every now and then. You go back to DeMarvion Overshown and Malik Jefferson. Now we're starting to see some playmakers. Last year we saw Roschon and Bijan, A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy potentially joining together. Obviously, Jay Witt will be in the conversation to get drafted as well. We're going to see some Longhorn touchdowns return to the Longhorns in the NFL segment down at DKR next year whenever they highlight the Longhorns that made the jump to the NFL. And that's very exciting for me. So it does also highlight just the path that Texas is on, both from a program itself and also a developmental side. So being able to boast how many Longhorns will be drafted this year is something that the staff will be able to use in recruiting for this year and years in the future.
Yeah, you look at all of it right now, and it just really looks good. Some news out of Oklahoma, CJ. The Sooners making a move at defensive coordinator in the offseason after the loss in the Alamo Bowl to Arizona. A good season overall, but apparently Brent Venables wasn't exactly happy. Tell us what's going on in Norman this morning.
Yeah, Oklahoma and defensive coordinator Ted Roof have mutually agreed to part ways. That came late last night, and only about 2 or 3 hours afterwards, a replacement was found. So Oklahoma will be hiring former Jacksonville State defensive coordinator Zach Alley, who is only 31 years old, very young, very enthusiastic on the recruiting trail. He's worked with Brent Venables in the past on the recruiting side of things. He will be joining Venables' staff. Interesting note, Oklahoma's defense jumped from they were averaging 30 points per game in year one under Brent Venables' staff to 23.5 points, which ranked about 40th, right outside the 40th spot in the national rankings. So there was improvement. Clearly not enough. Clearly not enough of a hands-off approach from Brent Venables, which is what this hiring will allow him to do, rather than being the guy that continually has to be involved with installs, play callings, everything along the lines of that. He now gets to take a step back with guys that he's familiar with from Clemson, and that's where this hiring comes from. So a bit of an interesting mark. And, Bobby, I wanted to ask you, how often do you see teams walk into a new conference with a brand-new offensive line, a first-year quarterback, a brand-new defensive coordinator, and brand-new offensive coordinator?
Well, usually it only happens when the head coach gets fired. That's about the only time. I will say that the moves occur. I mean, it's not like Brent Venables' defense isn't going to have his fingerprints on it, right? The guy was a former Clemson assistant as well. So they've worked together in the past. That's one. As far as the offensive side of the ball, Seth Luttrell was on staff as well at Oklahoma. Yeah. So it's not brand new. It's not brand new. You know what I mean? And that is a scenario to look or think about. Jackson Arnold also had a year in the system, started the bowl game. I do think it's going to be difficult for them. I do think they'll have a better defense next year, though. I think going down to 23 points a game really speaks to where they're at and whatnot. I feel like, CJ, the thing that we need to be looking at right now is not just the Oklahomas, but also the A&Ms and the Arkansas and the Ole Misses, Mississippi State, all these guys, Kentucky, that Texas is going to be playing next year. We're going to have to start kind of detailing those guys and understand what exactly is going on there. But look, there are a lot of things going on. Some people asking in the chat right now about other coaching moves. Bo Davis and Terry Joseph, apparently the object of the affection of LSU at this point. I was told late yesterday that they believe neither would be moving on. So I don't know if that's not a definite, but I was told that if they had to guess right now, neither would be moving anywhere else in this offseason. So, I know there was a lot of conundrum and concern, et cetera, about this last week or yesterday, leading up to this. But that's what I've been told from some folks inside Newhouse and the Texas athletic department. So we'll see where that goes. Certainly something worth watching as LSU eventually announces its defensive coordinator, who we think might be a former Texas GA, Blake Baker, out of Missouri. Now the defensive coordinator at Missouri. He was on campus at the same time as Bo Davis back in 2011, 2012 as well. All right, let's keep going here, but I want to bring in our man, Blake Monroe. Blake, welcome in, buddy.
Oh, man, finally back there. Had some internet issues this morning, some storms last night. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but we're here now, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. The thing I would say, we were going through this, and I don't usually put up the posts about where everybody is from in the morning. You usually do that for us, Blake, but it was really fun seeing all the different places, whether it was San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Nicaragua was one of them,
All over.
Illinois, et cetera, all throughout the country. Longhorn fans coming in and joining us to talk a little Texas football today as well. CJ, you were down in San Antonio this week, watching not only Trey Owens, but also the freshman, will be a freshman wide receiver in Ryan Wingo. Give people a sense for what Texas is getting there, because he seems to be, or sounds to be, maybe a little something special for Texas.
Yeah, I think he was on the top performers for day 2 last night coming out of San Antonio. That was a no-brainer for me the minute I started watching him. 6'2" and can run. The routes were impressive, something that I was a little bit skeptical about. I wasn't sure if he would be fine-tuned in the sense of creating separation that wasn't just a result of being, superiorly more athletic than his opponents. Going against the All-American defensive backs in one-on-ones and in even the team settings, very rarely was Ryan Wingo ever covered very tightly. He was finding separation and success seemingly in any type of setting that he was in. So very encouraging to me. Bobby and Blake, we've obviously talked about the number of targets and of availabilities, that are coming open for the Texas wide receivers. Wingo, who, again, I was a bit, slower on to, hopping on the train that he will be a big contributor right away. I'm now looking at it like that. It will be, very difficult to not see Ryan Wingo in year 1 very often on the field. So he was far and away the biggest playmaker for what I saw in my money's worth down there day 2. Ryan Wingo's a special talent, and Texas is getting a good one there.
CJ, you mentioned like Jonte Cook was an elite recruit, but didn't see a lot of time this year. But he was blocked by 3 really, really good receivers that were also elder statesmen, right? You think Wingo has that juice to break in right away, essentially? Yeah, I do. And I having talked to Ryan Wingo afterwards, I kind of got the idea that he was there mentally. He wanted to get there, get down to campus as an early enrollee. And I think Zena Umeozulu mentioned it best. He wants to walk in and be a sponge, and just embrace everything, let everything come to him, and just absorb the knowledge of being a college athlete. That's the exact sense that I got from talking to Ryan Wingo. And that's really impressive, because at the wide receiver position, there's so many small nuances that go into being a successful wide receiver, whether it be routes, alignment, the little off the ball releases. There's so many little things that go into being a good receiver. And right now I'm seeing Ryan Wingo as someone that wants to walk in and learn everything. So he told me he wants to come in right away and just learn. I don't care where I am on the depth chart. I'm here to learn. I'm here to get better. I'm here to improve my craft. That was very encouraging to me. And if that, is able to elevate his game even just a little bit, it's going to be very difficult to not see him on the field year 1.
A lot of people excited about him coming in, no doubt about that. Well, Bobby, before we move on, I'm going to let you tell everybody out there how they can escape the insurance trap with BKCW.
Yeah, absolutely. Our friends at BKCW are back with us again this spring, and we appreciate them. Winner, did your business have a frustrating insurance or employee benefits renewal? Most likely you didn't hear from your insurance agent all year at your business. And then right before it was time to renew, they delivered the bad news of a rate increase. When this happens, the agent is providing no value, and you're stuck in what we call the insurance trap. BKCW takes you out of the insurance trap by providing you with actual risk management consulting, not just price quoting. Operating out of their headquarters in Austin and owned by a UT grad, BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs while effectively managing your company's risk. BKCW has already helped some of the most well-known construction companies restaurant groups, breweries, and nonprofits in Central Texas, as well as us here at On Texas Football. Escape the insurance trap, and it all starts with a free risk assessment. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started with a free risk assessment and escape the insurance trap. Thanks, BKCW. Guys, give them a call. They've helped us here at On Texas Football as well, so appreciate them.
Okay, guys. Well, we want to thank them for sponsoring every Friday right here on Coffee and Football. And let's get to some questions now. And we'll start here with Drew Eames. He says, Bobby, how many players leaving are we expecting today or tomorrow with the extended deadline?
Yeah, the extended deadline is through Saturday. It's 5 days after the end of the football season for a team if they're in the playoffs. Look, I don't know. I was thinking 3 to 5 or 3 to 6. I don't have that number quite yet. I will say this. Steve Sarkisian already met with all of the players prior to the bowl game. So prior to the bowl game, he had met with everyone. Post bowl game, he's only meeting with guys who asked to meet and or who have NFL thoughts right now or last minute change of mind, etc. So it's not this, everybody's at Steve Sarkisian's door wanting to talk. At this point, I think anything 3 or below would be a win. Texas doesn't have a lot of guys they want to leave, just to be fair. I mean, usually there's a culling process, right? Texas isn't in that situation because they feel like they've done a pretty good job of recruiting. So it's more about keeping who they've got at this point. But we'll see how that goes all in. The Longhorns right now, guys, really trying to just get through this phase and pick up a couple of guys out of the portal, particularly some older guys that are good at wide receiver, defensive tackle, perhaps a safety or a cornerback as well.
Well, let's look at the flip side of that question. And MJF says, now that the Horns and Bama are done, are there any Bama players that have or may likely enter the portal that the Horns could possibly want?
So somebody mentioned this in the chat. Shaz Preston is somebody that actually came down to between Texas and Alabama. But my understanding is Texas actually is would likely be more interested in Malik Benson, a junior college transfer that has size and speed. Preston's more of a detailed route runner receiver, which Texas thinks they have enough of in a guy like a DeAndre Moore, fairly. And so I don't think that's the piece. Malik Benson is the one that has the take the top off speed that Texas might be interested in. However, I still expect Texas to actually look for guys that have more experience, that have caught 40 or 50 passes. Matthew Golden had 38 this year. That's the kind of level they're looking at that still have that speed and ability downfield that they want.
Hey, guys, we got a super chat here from Jeff Carey. He says, when you guys went over the list of starters we were losing, I had a panic attack. And then can you recommend an on Texas basketball site? Bobby, we got a basketball program here. Can you tell them about it?
Yeah, we have UT Brotherhood. Comes out about once every week. It's been missing the last couple of weeks, but we'll get back to it. It's with Royale Ivy, DJ Augustine, TJ Ford stops in sometime. It's hosted by Nick Shuley. You can also look it up individually. It's called UT Brotherhood, but I think it's Brotherhood. Make sure you guys check that out. Those are good guys over there, and they do really, really good work. I wouldn't worry about, every team has to replace guys. Texas will have to replace guys. The difference between Texas and, say, a TCU this year, CJ, Texas is more well prepared because of its recruiting to handle the losses or the attrition through the NFL draft. I'm not saying they're going to be perfect, but they definitely are more well situated. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think when you've talked about the recent recruiting classes, we're set to replace an Xavier Worthy with a 5-star Jonte Cook. That's one of the advantages Texas has when it comes to reloading rather than rebuilding. And also look at what Texas has done already in the portal with their 3 additions. These are big-time producers where they've been. Obviously, Makuba has been an all freshman All-American. Trey Moore just was second in the country in sacks. Matthew Golden, as you mentioned, almost 40 catches this year in the Big 12, no less. So these are high-profile guys that are able to walk in and produce right away on a big stage. I think the recruiting classes of past are going to help. One more guy who I don't think is getting enough love is going to be at right tackle. There's a lot of teams kind of poking and prodding with Cam Williams right now, but he's kind of penciled in, at least on paper, pretty early out to be that starting guy at right tackle when Christian Jones departs and moves on from Texas football. So that's kind of the next step. We saw how, I guess, promising he was against Kansas State in his first career start. Should he get those false starts cleaned up? It was almost a perfect game for Cam Williams in his first career start. So I think that is the difference there. The talent is already there, and obviously you're talking about a couple guys who have been in the program and in the system for multiple years now to get them quickly up to speed compared to getting guys who haven't played or seen the field like TCU was last year.
Talking about guys that haven't played yet, let's talk about Brandon Baker. Tom Brigman asked, what's the word on Brandon Baker? Will he be a factor for Texas, and is he starting?
Well,
I don't think he starts.
No.
I think that Cam Williams. Oh boy, sorry guys. Cam Williams, a little Christmas cold. Cam Williams and Jaydon Connor are going to battle it out as of right now at right tackle. That's my expectation. Left guard is going to be Cole Hudson and Neto this spring. That's what I'm being told at this point. So Neto, by the way, I mean, just people have been asking some about him. He was one of the guys in the final 2 weeks of the season and in fall or in the winter camp that people circled as playing extraordinarily well and taking it up a level. So do not give up on him. I think left guard is going to be Hudson and Neto going at it. I think right tackle is going to be Jaydon Connor and Cam Williams going at it. That's the game plan as of right now. I do think they're going to look to move Jaydon Connor to the outside because Jaydon Connor, I think he worked really well in the Big 12 where maybe the defensive line is generally not as big and all you have to do is shadow. In the SEC, they're going to have a bunch of 325-pound guys pushing you. And so they're going to need more people that are lower center of gravity and a little bit more stronger in their base. And so I think that's the thinking going into next year.
What a fun problem to have.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, you want to know why I don't feel bad and don't panic, CJ, about going to the SEC and next year? It's that reason.
Exactly.
Look, they have pieces. This is not, it's like I said, it's not TCU where they didn't have the backups. Texas has done a really, really nice job. And frankly, Sark's just done a good job and his coaches have done a good job of adding pieces to the puzzle. I really believe that. And we'll see what's going on in the spring, but improvement from Cam Williams, Neto. I'm not so sure that the offensive line with Jake Majors returning isn't significantly better next year. There's an older Kelvin Banks. There's an older DJ Campbell. There's an older Cam Williams. There's an older Jaydon Connor. There's an older Cole Hudson. They really only lose. You can take about, they lose Hayden. They're losing Christian Jones, but they only lose 1 out of 5. And some really talented guys are getting older. Okay. So I feel like the offensive line is destined to be a strength of this team for the next 2 to 3 years at least. Now they'll have to keep adding really good pieces over the next year, like Daniel Cruz, Brandon Baker, Nate Kibble, Trevor Gooseby, Jaden Chapman, those kind of guys to have to kind of breathe into it. But I feel like they've done a good job in that respect. And that is not going to be a problem in the SEC.
We have a super chat, y'all, from Kabir Hussein. Thank you, Kabir. He says, what portal cornerback do y'all think we most want?
Well, I don't know that there is one yet. So I think they were still combing through people as of yesterday. There was a chance one of the Utah corners was going in, and that would have been an automatic. There's an all ACC player out of NC State but he's a 4-year player. So Texas, one of the things people have to understand, Texas can't take many seniors or fifth-year players that haven't graduated because they're not far enough along in their degree plan at the University of Texas. It's why Texas had a little bit of a trouble getting Andrew Makuba into school. Frankly, the last 60 hours at the University of Texas have to be taken at Texas. And there's an NCAA rule that they have to be making progress towards their degree plan. So the guy at NC State, for the record, would be an immediate take for just about anybody in the country. But certain schools like Texas who have that issue would not be a candidate.
Well, while we're on the subject of portal cornerbacks, let's talk about Gavin Holmes. Frioli 93 says, I think Holmes had some minor contributions to the corner room this year, but not enough to stay with all the young talent coming up and coming in. Y'all's thoughts?
I disagree. I mean, I think he's going to play. I think that he didn't play much because Malik Muhammad or Manny Muhammad. But you take who's next up after Muhammad, right? I mean, who's next up after Muhammad and Terrence Brooks? It's Gavin Holmes right now. He's ahead of Warren Roberson, actually. So they're going to see action. And Makuba playing nickel makes sense. But what if Makuba moves to safety out of necessity? I think Gavin Holmes has a spot on this team. Not saying he's going to be perfect or anything or whatever. The thing that Holmes has that the other guys on the team don't is speed. Now, he didn't see much action against or any really against Washington, but that's something to watch for.
And then Ray Potter follows that up with, do you think he comes back and enters the portal? The youth movement is there, telling Watts to switch positions, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see him?
Watts is interesting. Watts theoretically should be going pro. If he decides to return, where does he have a spot? CJ, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is one of those interesting, I don't want to say problems, but it's a spot you want to be in if you're Texas because you're reloading with younger players being better athletes, having produced on the field already. There's a spot where you are walking into 2024 thinking, my 2 young cornerbacks are the best on the roster. And I think that's encouraging. Obviously, you want the competition. You want these guys, Bobby, as you like to say, the iron makes stronger iron or whatever it is.
Iron sharpens iron. Yeah.
That's exactly it. So that's what you want in these competitions. But I'm looking at it right now where I saw enough out of Terrence Brooks and Malik Muhammad specifically where I'm comfortable with those 2 being my starting cornerbacks in 2024. So while it's nice that Ryan Watts will come back, it does give Texas the opportunity to kind of toy around with where he fits in the secondary. Like you just mentioned about the offensive line, that's kind of where I think you can plug and place and move some pieces around to ensure that you have the best athletes on the field that will give you the best production. So I don't know if a portal entry is on the table for Ryan Watts. I hope it's not. He's a good player. He was, an inch or 2 away from making 2 PBUs. That ended up being pretty big plays for Washington. But besides the point, he was pretty solid all year long in my eyes. But I do think there's better athletes and better cover corners that Texas has below him at the moment.
Yeah, I think all of that. Look, Ohio State tried to make him a safety. He came to Texas because he wanted to be a corner. I don't think he has the long speed to be a corner. We've discussed this at the next level. He's actually been a good player for Texas this year. Is he perfect? No, but he's a good boundary corner. The question is, if you go to the SEC, do things change because all of a sudden the SEC starts having more speed on the outside than they do at a lot of places in the Big 12? That's the give and take there as well. I got a couple other things I want to mention. KJ Lacey, the quarterback out of Saraland in Mobile, Alabama, he and his teammate Ryan Williams, the wide receiver out of Saraland, will be in Austin on the 27th, not the 20th of January. That's important because the 20th is the big recruiting weekend, the junior day for the Longhorns that we've all been talking about and waiting on. The quarterback, KJ Lacey, coming in on the 27th with his wide receiver, Ryan Williams. Williams also looking, of course, at Alabama and Auburn at this point.
Very big news for Texas. There's no doubt about that. All right, guys, Captain Americano. Who will be the biggest difference makers next year? Who steps up at positions of need, whether it be defensive line, wide receiver, defensive back, etc.? What y'all got?
Well, I hope it's Alfred Collins. I hope that's one of them at defensive line, because if he can become better, that's a big one. Wide receiver, I think it's going to be Jonte Cook. Defensive line, I mentioned Alfred Collins. Defensive back, I expect a big movement from both Manny Muhammad and Derek Williams next year. It's their first. They got a real taste of it this year. Now I think they're going to be frontline starters for the rest of their career. That's my opinion. And
yeah,
so
I'm with you on Jonte Cook.
Go ahead, CJ.
I'm with you on Jonte Cook. I think he's probably primed the most of any player on the team right now to make that biggest jump that we'll see in 2024. So he's obviously my number one pick. With Matthew Golden coming in as well, it certainly adds up for Jonte to be on the field regardless of who else is in this wide receiver room. I'm looking at the defensive line, and while it's great that Alfred Collins is there, you're going to need more bodies in that room to take that next leap. I'm looking at a Jere Bledsoe and Aaron Bryant. This spring, as you mentioned previously, Bobby, is going to be huge to see what happens with Sadir Mitchell's body in terms of transforming some of these proportional weight movements in the body and just getting his figure up to speed with the SEC. So I'm all about, Aaron Bryant, Jere Bledsoe, two guys that have played sparingly this year. They got enough, I would say, play time to make me rather encouraged about what they could turn into with a full slate in a full rotation in 2024. But I'm looking for one of those two guys to be up there with Vernon Broughton, Trill Carter, and Alfred Collins.
What about tight end?
Ooh. JT Sanders is likely to announce any minute. Adonai Mitchell apparently announcing any minute too. Those guys are both expected to go to the NFL. Sanders and Mitchell. I'm really concerned about that spot after Gunnar Helm. I think Juan Davis is a good receiving tight end, but he's not necessarily a matchup issue for folks. And I don't know if Spencer Shannon and Will Randall are ready yet. We'll have to wait and see until the spring and see what kind of advancement they've made at this point. Gunnar Helm is a big one, but man, you don't want to go in one deep necessarily at tight end in the SEC. I can tell you right now, you don't want to do that. Now, Malik Ogbo caught a pass, though. I mean, maybe Malik Ogbo is your bonus tight end going forward. I mean, seriously, maybe that's something they try to push on goal line and short yardage next year, CJ, as a workaround for not having a second tight end.
What about, so we have a question here from Football Texas. Portal for a tight end? I would have to assume so, Bobby.
Yeah, they're trying. I think they're gonna have to try once JT makes it known that he's going pro. They're just going to have to because I don't know. We mentioned Ogbo, but he's limited. He's certainly not going to hurt you vertically, right? He may be good in red zone type situations though, because he's quick, even though he's really, really big. But after Gunnar Helm, you just don't know because you haven't seen Shannon, Will Randall, and Juan Davis in that they haven't been pushed in that elite role where they have to be relied on. He has, in Mock Chanel says, Juan Davis has looked good blocking. He has in some ways. He's a good H-back blocker, but not a good inline blocker. And you need both. You want both the way Sark uses them. And that's, frankly, that's been JT Sanders' biggest bugaboo. Hasn't been the crackback block stuff that he does. It's been, or the seal blocks that he's had issues with. It's been the man-on blocking. And that's the same with Juan Davis.
Bobby, here's a fun one. When Texas goes into that jumbo package and brings in a Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat, Malik Ogbo as well, who do you see this far out from 2024 as being in those personnel roles come 2024? That stump you a little bit?
Yeah, because I don't think Jere Bledsoe is the most athletic of that group, clearly. But
yeah,
he's not the superhuman size that Murphy. They don't have the superhuman size guys. Is Sadir Mitchell,
right?
And I don't think they're gonna. I just don't think he's going to be that guy as a sophomore, right? So I don't know that they have that guy next year or either of them, right?
No,
That's the real question. Like I don't see Vernon Broughton doesn't have that low base. Trill Carter's not that quick. So I think I don't know that that's going to go the way of the dodo bird. They may put an offensive lineman back there, for example, instead of a defensive lineman in those sets. We'd have to see.
And also, I wouldn't say any of these defensive linemen have the middle school background of being a running back like Byron Murphy as well. So.
or Malik Ogbo, by the way, middle school running back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to keep talking about that for a second because Nathan wants to know, is Bledsoe still a defensive tackle or a defensive end? Seems like he still doesn't have the weight for defensive tackle.
He's much better now than he was a year ago. And I think he's 280 right now, but in the SEC, 280 is light. At defensive tackle, exceedingly light. They'd love to get him to 295 to 300 and then let him be a light defensive tackle and pair him with someone like a Trill Carter, right? That is more of a Sadir Mitchell or even an Aaron Bryant. They need that bigger weight to pair with him right now. They can't just let two guys like Vernon Broughton and Dre Bledsoe can't play at the same time unless it's a passing situation. They get moved too easily because they're lightweight.
Yep. I was just looking up. I have the roster right here, right behind me. So 274 pounds is what Dre Bledsoe weighed in at the beginning of the year. That's obviously you can account for, 5, 10, maybe pounds that have been added as the season has progressed. But that's a number that you'd like to see as close to 300 as possible before you really start deploying him snap in and snap out over the duration of a game.
And then this next question is from Bobby Betronic, and he says, is Bryant a Murphy light facsimile?
No, not as quick. Not as quick. Although, look, I mentioned Neto having a good campaign this winter. I was told that Aaron Bryant had a really good one, really good winter practice. He's gone from a guy that they didn't know whether he'd ever do something for him to where now he's a guy that they think will. I don't know that he's ever going to be a top line player, but they do feel like he's getting into that category where he can be a reliable piece of this defense. And heaven knows they're going to need it at defensive tackle, losing what they lost. I mean, two great players in Sweat and Murphy.
Then we're going to talk about Tap for a second. We got a couple of questions about him. I'm going to combine these. Miguel Gonzalez says, Tap flashed well at times this year. He's my sleeper for D-line next year. And then Mock Snell says, someone said that Jamon Tap might portal. Is that a real possibility? So let's talk about him, what his expectations are next year, and then obviously answering Snell's question about the portal.
Well, look, same position as Trey Moore. So there might be some issues there to be considered. But as of right now, I have not heard his name as a for sure portal guy. So I don't want to put anything out there. I do think he was making progress. And again, a lot of these guys are making progress. You don't want to throw Aaron Bryant, when he first came on board, looked out of place at Texas at defensive tackle. 2 years later, he doesn't. Jamon Tap may have looked out of place his first year at Texas. Maybe now, 2 years later, he doesn't. You guys have to realize, I mean, they're developing, and all their bodies develop differently. I was talking to a player's parent over the weekend in New Orleans. And he said that the coaches tell them each player runs their own race. Some people come in like Kelvin Banks and they're ready, right? Or at least as ready as possible. Other guys come in and they need to wait. They need to bake. I've been using that terminology. Each player, just take it this way. Each player runs their own race. Somebody like T'Vondre Sweat, it took 5 years. Okay. Now, was it worth the wait? Probably so. He won the Outland, right? So each guy is running their own race. They're not all ready. Cam Williams is running his own race compared to Neto, compared to Jake Majors, etc. Same goes on the defensive line. Same goes at receiver. We've seen this in the past at Texas where, frankly, John Harris comes up and has a great fourth year, but it was almost, what do you have, 15 catches his entire career going into his senior year and then has 60. Everybody's running their own race. Adrian Phillips is another one. Now he's a 7 or 8 year pro. He was a piece of the defense for 3 years, and all of a sudden starts as a senior and ends up being a long-term pro. Everybody has to understand that that's part of the process, and that everybody, they all have their own timeline. I wish, my son is different than my daughter. I know that sounds weird, but my daughter is she's all academics all the time. My son's maybe I'll take it seriously someday. So it's just, but they're the same level of smart between them, right? It's just they're on different timelines.
We'll take a couple more questions about the D-line. And this first one from Fungo Master, he says, how has Gillette been coming along?
It's another one. Look, I was told Jelani McDonald looked good at safety. Darian Gillette and Leon Galafau looked good at linebacker. The one that came along really well on the defensive line during the winter workouts was Aaron Bryant. On the offensive line, Neto Umeozulu made a big step, they thought, over the last 2 games of the year and over the last month of the year. Apparently, Neto has rededicated himself a little bit. So let's see what that means. And then I was told Trey Wisner looked really good, and we saw what Jaydon Blue has done. How much – look, Jaydon Blue – this time 6 months ago, I guess May, he was getting ready to go in the portal, CJ. He had told his teammates he was going in the portal. How much of a change can this go in 180 days, essentially? How much of a change can an 18 or 19-year-old go through? Right? That he literally was about to go in the portal.
Yeah, no, trust me.
I know you reported the same as I did. So the reality of it is they change their mind and they rededicate themselves, and they don't even know what they can be. But Trey Wisner is another name that was given to me.
There's one thing I do want to touch on just a little bit, and it's with these guys who aren't seeing the field a whole lot right now. They're young in their careers. For a lot of guys at a lot of schools, you're probably sitting there thinking, I can move on to a different university and see the field a lot sooner. One thing that is helping Texas retain this talent is what they have right now with the Texas One Fund, the collectiveness or the collectives and just the togetherness of the Texas football team, the culture that you've talked about. It's willing, or these players are a little bit more willing to sit back, wait their term, and develop because there's, some pieces in play right now that are keeping them, I would say they're not hungry, if that makes sense, in terms of the NIL aspect. That is a great piece and weapon that Texas is having on their side right now. And we've talked about it. There have been a lot of teams that have been, wanting to get involved with Texas players that haven't seen the field yet. We've seen some portal departures already. But right now, Texas can point to just about every position on the field and say, yeah, we've developed here. We've developed there. Look at where these guys as freshmen were compared to, their final year on campus. Trust the process and also be taken care of by the Texas One Fund. And that's something that hasn't been mentioned a whole lot, but that's something that is certainly keeping Texas, in the good graces of a lot of these guys who aren't seeing a lot of the field.
We're going to take one more D-line question before we move on. And it's about Billy Walton. How's he progressing physically? Asked by Mock Schnell. And Mock says he is a dog. Have y'all heard anything on Walton?
Well, I agree with that comment. First of all, I think CJ's seen him in person as well. Some people love football, and then some people love football and show it. He's one that does both, right? Yeah. The question will always be is, can he get big enough? Can he get big enough to be a plus player? Because he has that dog mentality. He has the athleticism. He has the desire. I think this is a big offseason for him too. I really do believe that. But I feel like, look, guys like Savion Red, Billy Walton, guys that Trey Wisner that love football. and it shows every time they go out on the field. That's one of the things I think. Jordan Whittington is another one. Roshan Johnson, those guys that you can just kind of feel that they love it. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Blake and CJ, that's one of the things I think that Steve Sarkisian's done a great job of mixing in to his roster so that it's not all 5-star blue chips. You know, it's not all Xavier Worthies and Quinn Ewers and JT. I mean, it's a lot. It's some of that dog mentality that we talk about that they really love ball. I mean, you think Texas has done a good job of that? Because it feels like it's more the case now than it has been in the last 5 or 10 years overall.
You're muted, CJ.
So I just got a text. Trill Carter just entered the transfer portal. So
okay, wow.
On the topic of defensive linemen, there's one that Texas will either have to fight back and win that re-portal recruitment, or they'll have to look for another body. A Jamari Caldwell, someone that we've talked about in the past as in terms of where Texas could look already prior to this move, but that's big. What does that mean for the 2024 rotation down there?
Wow, that's horrible. I say horrible. He's not, if they could get Jamari Caldwell, it's not a huge loss, but man, that makes getting someone else that much more important because he was a rotational player for them. I mean, he played. He was one of the guys that played.
Texas only swapped 4 defensive linemen in that Washington game. It was obviously interior defensive linemen: T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Trill Carter, Vernon Broughton. Vernon Broughton is now looking like he will be the only one returning unless Texas is able to win out this portal recruitment once again.
Man, that's insane. I don't think
that's a tough one for Texas, guys.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Okay, guys, well, it is time for me to tell everybody out there about Manscaped. And cheers to the new year from our friends at Manscaped, because your resolutions shouldn't be the only things that are well kept. 2024 is the time for new heights, new opportunities, and a new look for your Times Square balls. Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Whether you're looking to maintain a trim or go for that clean-shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. Trusted by over 10 million men worldwide, now is your time to get a grip on your grooming with our exclusive offer. You go to manscaped.com and use code ONTEXAS for 20% off plus free shipping. Happy New Year or Happy New Balls. I've told you this week about Manscaped's 5th generation lawnmower, but now I'm going to tell you about getting the full grooming experience with Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0. In this grooming kit, you get the trusted lawnmower, Manscaped's ear and nose hair trimmer, and essential aftercare products with the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. Yep, deodorant for your balls. Bet you didn't. And let's face it, resolutions might come and go, but well-groomed you is here to stay thanks to Manscaped. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code ONTEXAS at manscaped.com, because nothing says Happy New Year like a deal that leaves your balls and your wallet feeling refreshed. Embrace the new you and definitely embrace the new trimmer, courtesy of Manscaped. I want to thank them for sponsoring today. And we have some super chats that we need to get into, guys. Jeff Carey with another one. Jeff, thank you. He says, can we get a Sark advisor, someone that can tell Sark that his game plan and play calling isn't working and that we need to adjust?
I think that he does plenty good. I mean, let's be fair. They're 12-2 this year. They adjusted pretty well. I think he's gotten better. This is something that Rod and I talk about. He's gotten better over the last 2 years too, guys. You got to realize he's still growing as a coach. He's not Nick Saban. He's not 70. And he does have advisors. I mean, whether it's offense, defense, time management, all of that stuff. Jeff, I feel don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Texas was 12-2. 12-2. Are they perfect? No. But they're a lot better than they were a year ago, and they're certainly better than they were 2 years ago or the last 10 years. It's moving in the right direction. Keep giving them a chance. Keep giving them a chance.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep on with this subject for just a second. The Green Lantern says everyone is talking about our projected player needs. But what do you see are Sark's analysis needs for next year? Are there any big names being whispered about?
Analysts? No. I mean, typically those come after people get fired, frankly. So we'll see what that looks like. And I don't know. I don't have any big names and names that would be of news right now. That will happen soon. We're waiting right now on the linebackers coach to be named and see if Johnny Nansen actually takes that role once he returns back home. But we'll see if it goes in that direction.
Then we have a super chat from P.O. Davila. Thank you, P.O. He says freshmen coming in that will be immediate top contributors.
I based on CJ's feedback, I'd say Ryan Wingo is one.
Yep. I like Xavier Filsaime to be another. Texas is looking for speed, athleticism in the safety group. They've already shown that they can, have confidence in a true freshman safety who didn't have an early enrollee semester beforehand with Derek Williams this year. Look for Xavier Filsaime to find a way into that early rotation in the secondary to begin the year. That would be really big for the Texas DBs back there as well.
I wonder, what do you think about Michael Kern, the punter, as a possibility? I mean, I don't know that they necessarily want to do that, but he might be one that people aren't necessarily thinking of. I think they're going to try to find a way to get Colin Simmons on the field too.
Absolutely.
As a pass rusher, that would happen. And then maybe one more, maybe Jordan Washington, maybe. I'm just wondering who else might be a guy there. One of the corners, Santana Wilson or Wardell Mack, maybe.
I could see either of them as special teamers, for sure.
Yeah.
But in that cornerback rotation, I think you've got your guys. Who else do you want to start grooming and getting into position right away? We'll have to see after the spring season.
I'd put Alex January and DeAndre Robinson on there with this news today. I mean, you're going to have to that path is going to have to be accelerated.
That it's going to have to be expedited 100%. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's take a look at the portal list so far, courtesy of CJ here. And there you go.
So those are the guys that are in the portal, right, CJ?
Yes. Those the guys that have announced their intention to transfer elsewhere. And Texas now up to 10 players in the transfer portal. Still only 9 career starts. However, this late addition of Trill Carter obviously means a little bit more following the season with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy heading to the NFL. Trill Carter was a guy, as we've talked about, just a couple minutes ago, was expected to be heavily involved in that interior defensive line rotation. Now it's looking unlikely as his portal entry makes him number 10 from the 2023 team. But I'm looking at there. I see a lot of DBs, and we've talked about the five defensive back class for Texas. They've done good at addressing the needs that they're expecting in this class, and also, trying to get ahead of the curve by going out and getting guys where they're expecting attrition. It's all about how well they are able to produce and develop the minute they get to campus.
Don't forget about Makuba also in his addition. I think that one matters too.
Okay, guys, we're going to move on here. And let's take this question from Mock Schnell. Y'all earlier were talking about Trey Owens. And Mock says, the real question is how quickly does Trey Owens ratchet up? He might be quarterback 2 if Quinn is injured again this year.
I think he is quarterback 2 if Quinn is injured. I don't think there's going to be any doubt about that. CJ, give folks a sense of where you think Trey Owens. Does Trey Owens have NFL traits in your? I mean, just bottom line, does he have as good or better traits than say a Malik Murphy in some ways?
I think so. I think you see the maneuverability just a little bit more out of Trey Owens. He's very good at keeping his eyes down the field. I think that's something that, as a quarterback that is heading into the college ranks, that is something that can either make or break your tenure as a quarterback. If you're not able to scramble and continue to look down the field to create big plays as a result, you're looking at 3-yard gains or sacks or tackles for loss or balls that are thrown away. With Owens, who his entire senior film is him scrambling around the line of scrimmage and finding guys way down the field. That's encouraging to me. I've seen that in San Antonio up close and personal this week. He's very good at continuing putting touch on his passes down the field, despite having pressure come from his backside, up the middle, or in front of him. So that's where I would say he has a little bit more of an edge. I wouldn't say he necessarily has the biggest arm. He has a big arm, not a Malik Murphy arm. But one thing that I thought was really funny was Ryan Wingo told me afterward, in terms of talking about Trey Owens, he looked at me and he goes, I didn't know he could throw the ball that far. So that's encouraging in that sense as well. So I like Trey Owens. If Quinn Ewers does get hurt, he absolutely is the quarterback too. That's something I asked him. I was like, are you aware of, kind of the succession line at quarterback right now? And he goes, I'm all for it. I'm ready to get there. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to develop. So he's aware of it. If Quinn goes down, look for Trey Owens to be number 2 in that quarterback depth chart.
Look, Sark's done a wonderful job with the quarterback group. I mean, it's like we walked through the desert in the early teens for at that position. Matt Brown made probably some poor decisions overall, but that's the one thing you do not have to worry about, I think, with Steve Sarkisian. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think if there's any one position that we need not worry too much about, it's that one.
Yeah, I don't think he's given any calls for concern quite yet when it comes to quarterback recruiting.
Yep.
Emmanuel Villafranco wants to know, do y'all have a Trey Owens comparison? Who would you liken him to?
Anybody in particular?
I don't know. I don't think I've really thought of that. He's not a big running quarterback. He's not going to be a guy that takes off down the field and starts hurdling and juking. He's not that. He doesn't have that running part or aspect in his game, but he is tremendous at avoiding Big Ben, like a shell of Big Ben, kind of the pocket awareness to continue and carry on plays while also maintaining, the eyes down the field is, kind of the staple of what Big Ben what made Big Ben so special. I don't know. I haven't really thought of that.
He's big like that. He's big like that. He's 6'5", 240 or 235 right now as a high school senior. That's a huge quarterback, guys.
Absolutely.
I mean think about how big Arch Manning and Trey Owens are. I mean, they're bigger than your tight end group right now. You realize that?
Yeah, it's impressive.
I mean, it really is.
All right, we have a couple super chats that we need to get to, guys. Seth Alcazair, thank you, Seth. He says, Bobby or CJ, any chance Sark and Jackson are good with the receiver room as is and don't need to add another? Or, as Bobby says, do they still need another adult in the room?
Yes, they're still looking for one right now. Not saying they're going to get them, by the way, but absolutely still looking for one. I do think that they're willing to go into the spring without one. And to get the young guys to see exactly what they think they'll need next year. So think of it this way. Once they see all the newcomers, because I think all 4 receivers are early enrollees, right? Except no, 3 of the 4. Freddie DeBose is not. So 3 of the 4, Livingstone, Wingo, and Aaron Butler, are all midterm enrollees. So they'll get a look at those guys, as well as where Jonte Cook, Ryan Niblett, and DeAndre Moore are, and the incoming Matthew Golden. And that might give them a better sense of what they need coming out of spring camp. And I do expect, another round of portal transfers at that point. And they could potentially be more focused. Like, they don't know. We CJ and I and everybody can pontificate all this stuff about Ryan Wingo right now. But until the coaches have him on campus, understand how he takes coaching, they'll know about that time whether or not they will be ready or could be ready for prime time in the fall. And then they could go back into the portal in the May time period, late April, May, when it reopens.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, we have another super chat. This one from Tombstone732. Thank you, Tombstone. And he says, could Trill leaving be an indication that Bo Davis is gone?
No, they weren't entirely. That's not indicative of that. look, I mentioned earlier, I heard that Bo Davis most likely staying at Texas. I mentioned this really early in the broadcast here today. That's what I'm hearing about him and both him and Terry Joseph. Doesn't mean that it's done, but I do know that Texas is aware of it. I know that Steve Sarkisian's aware of it, and I know that Texas is going to do what it takes to keep Bo Davis. They want to keep Bo Davis. If that's the case, then I don't think there's – look, it would be rare unless it was Bo Davis's best friend. Like if it were Pete Golding that were going to be the defensive coordinator at LSU, I would be worried for Texas. And because he and Bo Davis are really, really tight. Okay. If it's not Pete Golding, I don't know that I would be extraordinarily worried about Texas losing someone that they want in Bo Davis. Now, Bo Davis can go make his own mind up. He's a grown man, but that's just how I'm hearing and feeling about the situation right now.
This next question comes from Rhett Kelly, and Rhett asks, will Filsaime be rotated early like Derek Williams this year and then become a starter later in the year?
I think he'll certainly be in that rotation early on. He actually has the benefit that Derek Williams did not have of being an early enrollee, going through spring football and that off-season weight program as well. So that will be something that he has to his advantage. We clearly talked about the 5-star rating and kind of everything that comes along the lines of that in terms of his play on the field. But for Xavier Filsaime, and I think for all freshman defensive backs, it's all about the speed of the game. Are you able to adjust? Are you able to keep your eyes disciplined and not bite on routes where you shouldn't be? That's going to be the big test for him early on in his college career this spring. But I do expect to see at least a little bit of Xavier Filsaime early in the year in that Texas safety rotation.
Bobby, before we move on, I'm going to let you tell everybody out there about how they can escape the insurance trap.
Yeah, BKCW takes you out of the insurance trap by actually providing you with risk management consulting, not just price quoting, like so many insurance agents do for businesses. Operating out of their headquarters in Austin, Texas, and owned by a UT grad, BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs while effectively managing your company's risk. BKCW has already helped some of the most well-known construction companies, restaurant groups, breweries, and nonprofits in Central Texas escape the insurance trap. And it all starts with a free risk assessment. They can also go statewide as well. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started with a free risk assessment and escape the insurance trap. Thank you, BKCW.
Okay, we have a super chat we need to get to, guys. This one from Eric76, and he says, who's next in line to be culture leaders like Whittington, Ford, Sweat, Sanders? Who steps up?
Kelvin Banks is next up. He's a guy that behind the scenes they were very excited about, in terms of the on-field play. First off, we've known that's been really good over the last 2 years, but in terms of practice, he and Jake Majors have really been some of the vocal leaders on that offensive line. That absolutely has been the case. Anthony Hill is a guy I'm expecting to make, kind of that next step for the defensive side of the ball in that leadership department. You talk about being in the middle of the field and what that entails as being the quarterback of the defense. He's in that position to really be the biggest, prime communicator. But also you go back to his high school days. Anthony Hill is one of the most competitive players I've ever covered. And that Denton Ryan program certainly, breeds winners. You talk about Jatavian Sanders, Austin Jordan, the time that they had in high school that, really led to so many deep playoff runs and state championship successes. Anthony Hill's a guy that I'm expecting to really take that next step in terms of being a vocal leader for the Texas defense next year.
I would add Barron Sorrell.
Absolutely.
Your list. I've heard nothing but positive things from him hey, everybody respects that dude when he walks in the locker room. So that's a 3-year starter as well. So he's done it on the field and elsewhere to get the trust of the coaches and his teammates.
And also Quinn.
Yeah, Quinn's got to be one.
He's got to be one.
Yep. He needs to take a step.
Well, while we're on the subject of Quinn, Emmanuel Villafranco says, what will be the strength of the team in offense and defense? Is it Quinn and the edges?
Well, I don't know. Well,
Offensively, yes.
Offensively, I think it's Quinn. I actually think it's going to be the running game.
I do too.
With the offense. I mean, you get, like we said, return 4 or 5. You've got, the run game was plenty good the last 3 games of the season, guys. It was plenty good. You're missing, out of that group that it was plenty good, you're missing one guy next year that made it plenty good. So I feel like that's going to be plenty good. I do think that they're going to have a harder time in the SEC moving the ball so easily, but I think that they'll also be a year older. On defense, what is I don't know that they're going to have necessarily a strength. I really don't. I think that's, is Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke ready to be a strength of a defense? I don't know. I don't know that question. I don't know that answer. And that's a difficult one for me, frankly.
And then Bobby Petronic wants to know, does Simmons' size limit him to third down specialist while we're on the subject of edges?
That's tough. That's kind of the biggest question right now. It's a question I had early on in his recruitment is how much he would be physically set to go, how much he is physically capable of handling at the next level. But you've seen the speed, you've seen the production. Those line up with guys that can get on the field and play right away. But at the next level, that speed is a bit of concern. I know that question or that comparison of Micah Parsons has been thrown out a lot, but the photo of the two of them on the sideline at the Cowboy game kind of eased my mind just a little bit, because I was, kind of looking and coming into this game or this recruitment thinking Colin Simmons was much more undersized than what he was. He actually had about half an inch on Micah Parsons. So it really depends on how his body adapts to the college weight room and weight training system. But early on in his career, I don't expect to see Colin Simmons on the field for 3 downs or, a full series at a time. I think he will be a rotational guy to begin his career. And once he kind of gets fully up to speed, the training wheels be taken off 100%.
Let me ask you all this. How much of an impact do you see Simmons having next year? And I'm not saying like you have to say, oh, he'll have 6 sacks or, whatever, but just in a general standpoint.
I think that is a big delta. Like, I think he could have 6 to 7 sacks, or he could have 1 to 2. Of all these incoming guys that have high marks, I think he has the biggest delta of the group, because if he can, to Bobby Petronic's point, if he can hold up against the run, Katie bar the door.
Yep.
Then he is a 3-down player, and all of a sudden you've got a potential star in the making. Now, I want to add something that y'all mentioned, or that was mentioned by a friend of mine that was at the Under Armour practices. They felt he has filled out much more from last year to this year. So he's starting that process of gaining the right weight, and he still looked lithe, if that makes sense. He still looked long-armed, but he's starting to put on the weight, the right kind of weight that would allow him to play on the edge, as opposed to and string out blocks, etc. I think that's going to be the telltale sign, whether it's this year or the year after, where he makes that ascendancy for Colin Simmons. I do think he's going to end up being a whale of a player. I don't know whether it'll be as a true freshman or really where he gets kick-started as a sophomore.
I think best case, brightest scenario for Texas is he walks in and shows a little bit of the spurts and highlights that Harold Perkins had his freshman year at LSU. I think Simmons is a little bit broader, a little bit bigger than what Perkins was whenever he arrived in Baton Rouge. Obviously, a change in scheme and how they used him kind of derailed his sophomore campaign. But what we saw from Harold Perkins his freshman year kind of gives me a little bit more of a enthused approach with how I think Texas can deploy Colin Simmons there.
Well, we have some super chats that we need to get to, and Justin Yarbrough will start us off. He says, what's the update on Vasek? I missed it yesterday, and any news on Zach Swanson? He's another young defensive tackle that's shown flashes minus size.
Yeah. Vasek is the process with him is all about getting healthy 100%. There had been a lingering issue with him dating back to his senior season at Westlake. So Texas is really waiting for him to get up to speed. I don't think he suited up for a single game this year. I could be wrong. But normally with these true freshmen, you suit up for the home games, you stand on the sideline, you're able to get some photographs and smile for mom. I don't think Vasek actually suited up at all as a result of that. That's really where things stand right now. This offseason and spring's session will be huge in terms of getting fully healthy and then showing the staff just what he can do on the field. Because I mean, y'all go back to his recruitment. Texas wanted him, pretty badly after he committed to Oklahoma. They wanted to protect the home field advantage they have down here in Austin recruiting wise, and they did a lot to go after him. So they had high hopes at the time, and I think they're excited to get him back on the field healthy.
And then this next super chat will be from Rhett Kelly. And Rhett asks, do y'all think Jaydon Blue has made the move to being more of a complete back rather than like a Keelan Robinson-like pass catcher?
Yes.
Yep.
I think he started that progression and realized it, right? And kind of, I think he actually took some criticism to heart and did something about it.
Absolutely.
I think Tashard Choice had some real difficult conversations with him. Not difficult, but just straightforward. And Jaydon Blue, instead of transferring, accepted it and tried to do something about it. This is one of the things that I think Texas does a really good job of, guys. And I've seen coaches and coaching staffs not be honest with players before and just try to keep them on the team, to keep them happy, etc. Steve Sarkisian and his staff, they have pretty honest conversations with guys. Like, this is what you need to do. This is what you have to do better. It's not about it's not letting the inmates run the asylum, right? Oh, you're doing great. You're doing great. And then all of a sudden you're not doing great. It is a conversation that's ongoing. And so I actually think they do a really nice job of not just setting expectations, but setting what they need those players to do going forward to be a real part of the team. They don't shy from the difficult conversations.
Yeah. One point on that, I think your point about not letting the inmates run the asylum, but also maintaining that level of authority and confidence and trust is something that is really underrated with the Texas staff. Bobby, did you see Harold Perkins actually got a rushing attempt in LSU Bowls game?
No, I did not.
Talk about doing whatever it takes to keep guys on roster despite the turmoil in the back end and kind of the unhappiness and easiness in which that season progressed for Harold Perkins. But you're not seeing that at Texas, and I think that's encouraging.
Yep.
Well, Bobby, you mentioned Tashard Choice's name, and Edward says, is he destined to be more than a running back coach? What he's been doing is nothing short of remarkable.
I could see him getting a head job somewhere. Stan Drayton got the Temple job, as a running backs coach, not real an assistant head coach. I could see that, CJ. I could see that, Blake and Edward. I think I could. I feel like it's got to be the right situation for him.
Yep.
I think that, look, he's maximizing his players. That's what just impresses the what out of me. Whether it's Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech, whether it's Jonathan Brooks and Roschon and Bijan at Texas, or whoever else came up, CJ Baxter and Jaydon Blue. He's getting those guys to maximize. And that's just a special trait in a coach. And then you add on his recruiting prowess, and it's just a different category. Like, by the way, we mentioned, CJ, that Devin Sanchez out of North Shore likely to commit to Ohio State tomorrow.
Correct.
Cornerback. Jordan Davison, the running back out of Mater Dei in Santa Ana, California, he's apparently closing in on a decision. He's expected to be at Texas for the junior day on January 20th, along with his high school teammate, wide receiver Marcus Harris. That's another guy that we've got to. I wouldn't say he's on commitment watch for Texas, but I know a number of crystal balls, RPMs, whatever you want to call them, have gone in for the Longhorns as well. What I'm saying here is this: Choice has shown the proclivity to not only extract great production from his existing players, he's also shown an ability to fill the pipeline at an elite level. That is something that a head coach both of those things are things that head coaches particularly need to be able to do.
For sure. We have one more super chat. This one from JR. Thank you, Jay. He says, you mentioned earlier that McDonald showed progress at safety. Is he no longer getting a look at nickel? Is Warren Roberson a safety? And is Crawford a guy that comes back or enters the portal?
So I'll answer what you can, CJ. What I can, CJ. You answer what you've got out of this. Okay. McDonald was moved to safety for the winter practices. That's done. Warren Roberson stayed at corner the entire winter practices. So will he get a look at nickel? That's a different story, but that's where they worked out during winter practices. Keaton Crawford could come back. He could enter the portal. He could go pro. And now people will laugh, go pro, not as a safety, but as a special teamer, not unlike Brennan Schooler. Keaton Crawford is seen as one of the top 2 or 3 special teams guys anywhere in the country right now.
Yep.
That's from a coverage perspective. So keep that in mind. Now, I think it's more likely he goes to the portal than goes pro or comes back. I think he's more likely to go to the portal right now, in my opinion. Could that change? Yes. CJ, you have anything to add on that?
No, I remember hearing Warren Roberson as one of the names, from the spring or I guess from August that was really surprising folks with his athleticism. He's got some spring in his legs. There's a lot of bounce, if you will. And I think, the coaching staff really likes that at the cornerback position. We didn't see a whole lot of them this year, obviously, but when you talk about teams that are really good at evaluating defensive backs, TCU was all over him. They wanted him from the get-go. Texas came in and jumped in and really swooped him at the final hour. So I think if there's any instance of doubt about the potential Warren Roberson has, I think that needs to be set aside. Because like I said, TCU is amongst the best and continually developing defensive backs and eyeing potential talent. They had Warren Roberson on top of his board. I go back to the final days before he signed with Texas. They were trying to get him on campus. He was, I think, at one of the All-Star games. He came back. TCU said, swing by. We got to see you one last time. And he did not make it in and eventually flipped to Texas. But that's how highly coveted I think of Warren Roberson. I think he's a really talented prospect. And on the outside, I like his potential at cornerback more so than at safety.
Okay, guys. Well, Bobby, it's about that time. We'll take just one more question, and then we better get out of here. And I'm trying to find a good one here. Here's a good question. Kabir Hussein, who is next year's Whittington for our team? Is there one?
I don't know if there is. I don't know. I mean, Whittington's tenure as a Longhorn had so many trials and tribulations. He was there for so long. I'm not sure there's a guy that has had a similar path to Whittington that is expected to be such a large part of the offense. I would very much like it. I think we would all agree. I would very much like it if it was Quinn. But I don't see that as his, necessary personality moving forward. You mentioned Barron Sorrell as a guy who is, been around for 3 years now, expected to take that big time leadership role, has already taken that leadership role this year as well. So, but on the terms of being like a Roschon Johnson or Jordan Whittington, I'm not sure there is one. I would be selling them short by comparing them to anybody else on the roster at the moment. Derek, I see the comment, Jake Majors is a possibility, but I'm not sure if he's, as vocal with the entire team as he is with just the offensive line.
I'm going to give you another name that people love behind the scenes. Some of the things that they're doing. That's CJ Baxter.
Yep.
So I can keep that name. That guy won that starting job for a reason.
It's crazy.
And I know people don't see it and all this other stuff because he's been dinged up and habitually injured, but there's a reason he won that job.
That's a good point.
Just keep that in mind. And now Jonathan Brooks is going pro, by the way.
Yeah.
How good can CJ Baxter be with a full year of development and health?
I guys, before we get out of here, I want to add this one more time. Let folks take a look over it with the addition of Trill Carter announcing that he's going into the portal, and then let you all have the opportunity to give your quick thoughts one last time.
Well, my thoughts are the ones that concern me are Trill Carter and Isaiah Nayor. The rest of them don't really concern me. Like, I feel like those are possible losses, if that makes sense. CJ, what do you think of the 10? What do you think?
Yeah, certainly Trill Carter is probably that number one loss for me. I trust Sarkisian and Chris Jackson to get that wide receiver room ready with what they have. If Texas was thinner at the wide receiver spot, and that's not to say that they aren't, but they have so much talent coming in. Jonte Cook's already here. Matthew Golden's been addressed as well. I would be much more concerned about the departure of Isaiah Nayor than I am about Trill Carter. But I look at the inexperience on the defensive line without a transfer portal addition already in the rings, that I'm looking at Trill Carter right now as the biggest loss. I don't know. I actually saw Casey Kane as a larger loss than Isaiah Nayor, just because we've seen him and what he can do to the Texas football team. I don't know. I thought Nayor was always a big question mark because he never got fully healthy after the ACL.
Fair.
Okay, Bobby, before we get out of here, let folks know what they can expect later today and, of course, this weekend right here on Texas Football.
Yeah, absolutely. CJ, myself, Rod getting together at 1 o'clock today. The Army or what used to be the Army All-American game, now just the All-American game in San Antonio occurs this weekend. We'll be on top of that, as well as some recruiting news and potentially any visitors for this weekend that are coming in from the transfer portal. There was one that was set up, but I don't know if that's still going to be happening now. But lots of different stuff going on. Rod and I are going to be talking about rating what we saw as the year-end grades for Texas at each position. That's one of the things we want to go over before we get too far removed from the season, give everybody a real feel for what we thought happened overall.
Well, we want to thank all of you for tuning in. I want to thank you for the super chats. There are definitely a lot of them today, so thank you for that. Got to thank BKCW for being today's sponsor, along with Manscaped. And be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We would definitely appreciate that. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime and every time a video is posted right here on Texas Football. And for Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you Monday morning.
Hook